promises betrayed, palace-centric church politics, and the birth of a movement. In this episode of Salvation and Catastrophe, the Greek-Turkish War, 1919-1923. I am Konstantinos Tralos. I want to start this episode by referring to an important event that took place in October 1918, which I did not mention last episode. On 12th October 1918, Ecumenical Patriarch Germanos V, under the Millet system, the temporal and spiritual authority over the 2 million Ottoman Greeks and other Orthodox Christian subjects of the Ottoman Sultan, is forced to resign after an orchestrated public verbal attack on his person during, of all things, a memorial liturgy. His opponents were laypersons and archbishops of the Orthodox Church who resented his authoritarian style and his past politics in the patriarchal struggle against Patriarch Joachim III, as well as his moderate reaction to the prosecution of Ottoman Greeks by the Committee of Union and Progress, İttihat ve Terakki Firkası, during the 1914-1918 period. Germanos will be the last ecumenical patriarch to serve as part of the Ottoman state. On 1st November 1918, the British began to occupy the oil-rich Mosul region in violation of the Mudros-Mondros armistice and against the protests of Ottoman 6th Army Commander Ali Hassan, later known Sabish. This is driven partly by the oil interest of the British elites. For example, Lord Curzon, as Dido Sotiriou points out, had shares in one of the oil companies. Sometime in November 1918, the Karakol Society is formed in Constantinople, Istanbul, by Kara Vasif Bey on orders of Talat Pasha. A key member is Kara Kemal, who had led the attempts to destroy Ottoman Christian economic activity in the 1914-1918 period and had served as Minister of Supply under Talat Pasha. Many of the members are ex-members of the Teşkilat-i Mahsusa, or special organization, who were called Fedain, which means in Turkish volunteers, created during the 1914-1918 period by Enver Pasha, and active in espionage and counter-espionage throughout the Middle East and the Caucasus, the destruction of Greek economic capital, and of course the extermination of the Armenian population in the context of the Armenian genocide. Meanwhile, in the Russian Socialist Federated Soviet Republics, RSFSR henceforth, Mustafa Subhi becomes aide of Stalin in the Central Bureau of Muslim Organizations of the Russian Communist Party. This will be among the first links between the future Turkish nationalist movement and the Bolshevik movement in the RSFSR. On 2nd November 1918, Greek Prime Minister Lefteris Venizelos, who is traveling to Entente capital since the 21st of October, visits UK Prime Minister David Lloyd George in London and presents a memorandum with his suggested resolution of the Eastern question. Now, George and Venizelos know each other since 1913, and there's a question on who was prodding who. Specifically here, Venizelos called for the expulsion of the Ottoman Empire from Europe, with Thrace given to Greece, an international state controlling the Straits and Istanbul, Constantinople created, and most of Western Asia Minor going to Greece. In Eastern Anatolia, he suggests the incorporation of the Greeks of the Pontus, Karadeniz region into an enlarged Armenian state under an Entente power mandate. And in Central Anatolia, the remaining Turkish state would also be put under an Entente power mandate. Venizelos has spent his time in the Entente capitals cultivating ties with the press, working to win over French Prime Minister Clemenceau to supporting the Greek claims, and mobilizing the powerful Greek diaspora communities and the Philhellenes that exist in various capitals to launch a major propaganda campaign in support of Greek issues. This is one of the biggest foreign policy propaganda campaigns in the history of Greece. It included, for example, the translation of the Greek national anthem by Rudyard Kipling. Now, Lloyd George is a Turkophobe, and it seems that he gave a lot of support to Venizelos' turn to elitarism in Anatolia after the Balkan Wars. He also made extravagant promises to Greece towards World War I. This personal relationship of these two men was a very powerful Greek asset, but it also meant that the Greek-UK relationship was very dependent on the chemistry of these two men. On 5th November 1918, at Kars, in the old Russian Empire, the Kars National Muslim Council, Milli Islam Surashi, is formed with support of Ottoman 9th Army Commander Yakup Sevki Pasha, later known Subashi. This is formed in reaction to the withdrawal of the Ottoman armies to the pre-1914 borders. Now, in 1918, the Ottoman Empire had reincorporated Kars and Ardahan, which had been lost to Russia in 1878, and it had moved on to conquer most of the southern Caucasus. But as part of the armistice of Mondros, the Ottoman army had to evacuate those territories and return back to the 1914 border. In the map, they essentially had to evacuate the regions between the blue and red line, losing the area ceded to it by the treaties of Brest-Litovsk and Batum. These were regions claimed by the newly independent republics of Armenia and Georgia. And significant numbers of Ottoman Armenian refugees were engaged in violent conflicts with the local Muslim communities, partly seeking vengeance for the actions of Muslims in 1915, 1916, 1917, and 1918, but mostly out of sheer desperation and need for survival. Fearing incorporation in either socialist Georgia or nationalist Armenia, the Muslims of the region, who were probably the majority population, let us be very clear, began organizing a movement to resist such an event. The first and second Kars Congresses are organized by them in order to declare globally their opposition to Georgian and Armenian rule. And they base their arguments on Wilson's 14 points. The same day, in the Ottoman Empire, the Committee of Union and Progress, Ittihad Veteraki Firkasi, dissolves itself officially in a final party congress. In Syria, the British demand from Mustafa Kemal Pasha to permit them to take the port of Iskenderun, Alexandretta, Hatay. Now, Kemal wanted to resist, but ultimately obeyed the government of Ahmet İzzet Pasha. On 7th November 1918, the Yildirim army group is officially dissolved, and Mustafa Kemal Pasha is recalled to Istanbul, Constantinople, just 8 days after taking command. I'll remind you, the Yildirim army group had been created during World War I and initially had been under the command of Field Marshal Falkenhayn of the German High Command. Now, Mustafa Kemal Pasha, before leaving, made sure to distribute some war material to cells of local Muslim notables for setting up resistance groups. But at this period, there's not a lot of interest in resistance. Now, on 8th November 1918, the city of Mosul itself is occupied by forces of General Marshal. Ali Ihsan Sabish complies with orders from Grand Vizier İzzet Pasha and evacuates Mosul, making sure to send as much war material as he can into central Anatolia and providing support for the formation of Turkish militias in the region. On 9th November 1918, the Renewal Party, Teceddüt Firkasi, is formed and takes over the majority of the assets of the now defunct Committee of Union and Progress. While it claimed not to be a successor of the Community of Union and Progress, as also did the Ottoman People's Liberal Party we saw formed last month, its assets and organization were pretty much those of the CUP. Between 11th and 12th November 1918, a traumatic event happens. The first Entente troops and naval units arrive at Istanbul, Constantinople. This includes the Greek armored cruiser Averov, a hero of the First Balkan War. 3,500 British troops join a French brigade, probably around 4,000 troops, from eastern Thrace in occupying key sites in the city. Later they are joined by Italian troops. The most serious issue for the Ottomans, and especially the Muslim population of the city, was the arrival of a unit of Cretan Greek gendarmes as part of the security forces, and patrols by Greek sailors from the Averov within the city, especially in the areas that had a predominantly Greek population, like Pera, which is today known as Beyoğlu. The arrival of Entente forces leads to joyous celebrations by Ottoman Greeks and Armenians, who see in them their eventual liberation, and worry for Ottoman Muslims and Jews in the city, who see in them their future subjugation. This situation leads Izzet Pasha to tender his resignation as Grand Vizier. The Sultan nominates Ahmet Tevfik Pasha as Grand Vizier. On 13th November 1918, Mustafa Kemal Pasha arrives at Istanbul, Constantinople, together with Rauf Bey, later Orbay, Fethi Bey, later Okyar, and Ismail Chanbulat. They try to steer the Ottoman parliament to reject Tevfik Pasha as Grand Vizier. He engages in a press campaign using Minber, the official newspaper of the Ottoman People's Liberal Party, which is the party to which Mustafa Kemal Pasha has provided his support, to build support for his personal inclusion in a government. But the Renewal Party is wary of Mustafa Kemal Pasha. On 15th November 1918, Mustafa Kemal Pasha has an audience with the Sultan. He is not offered a position in the new cabinet. On 17th to 23rd November 1918, in Piraeus, Attica, the inaugural Congress of the Socialist Labour Party of Greece, Socialistiko Ergatiko Koma Elados, also known as SEKE, is conducted. This new party aims to unify the disparate elements of socialist and Marxist thought in Greece. It is dominated by the Federation, a multi-ethnic but mostly dominated by Jews political organization founded in Thessaloniki, Salonika, during the period of the Young Turk Revolt. It was founded there because the Greek city of Thessaloniki was the city with the strongest working class in Greece. It should be noted here that in Greece at that era there was a distinction between Israelites, who were people who were Jewish in faith but Greek in their nationality, and the Salonika Jews, who were Jewish in faith and Sephardic in their national identity. This will play a very important role in World War II later on, and how the Holocaust is resisted or implemented in Greece. Now, the new party quickly aligned towards support for the Bolshevik regime in the Russian Soviet Federated Socialist Republic. On 18th to 19th November 1918, the Ottoman Parliament meets to vote for the new cabinet. The Ottoman People's Liberal Party, in which Mustafa Kemal Atatürk is associated, votes against Tevfik Pasha. However, the fear of a new election leads most of the Renewal Party to either abstain or vote in support. In the second vote, the decisive support of Renewal Party leader Sabri Bey, later Toprak, helped confirm the cabinet. Ahmet Tevfik Pasha becomes the Grand Vizier of the Ottoman Empire. He had served as Grand Vizier before for Padishah Abdul Hamid II during the Anti-Committee of Union and Progress 31st March incident period in 1909, when the anti-progressive faction in Islam tried to take over the government. Which is why Sultan Mehmed VI Vahdettin trust him to guard the interest of the dynasty rather than the interest of the state. The new cabinet included some persons deeply disliked by the Committee of Union and Progress. The war ministry, for which Mustafa Kemal was gunning, was given to Kolemen Abdullah Pasha, who had been the unlucky or disastrous commander of the Ottoman armies in eastern Thrace during the First Balkan War. On the other hand, through some key respected officers, many of them stalwart members of the Committee of Union and Progress, and many of them with personal connections to Mustafa Kemal Pasha, had held key positions in the Ottoman General Staff, which I remind you was not dissolved by the Mundros armistice. These included Cevat Çobanoglu Pasha, hero of Gallipoli, as chief of the General Staff, Brigadier Kazim, later known as Inanç, the veteran of Palestine and Syria, an assistant chief of the General Staff, and İsmet, later known Inonu Pasha, one of Kemal Pasha's division army commanders as Under-Secretary of the War Ministry. Another friend in power was Colonel Refet, later on known as Bele, commander of the important Ottoman Gendarmerie. On 25th November 1918, French Colonel Raymond arrives at Adana and informs the Ottoman governor that the French intend to occupy Adana. On 28th November 1918, after bringing the 1st Caucasian Corps back from Persia and securing as much war material as possible in Trabzonda, Brigadier Kazim Pasha, later known as Karabekir, returns to Istanbul, Constantinople. On 29th November 1918, there is a second audience of Mustafa Kemal Pasha with the Sultan. The Sultan uses these audiences to try and gauge the loyalty of the army to the dynasty. Mustafa Kemal Pasha is a popular officer who had built a very good media personage during and after the Gallipoli campaign, and the Sultan uses him to try to understand what the position of the army is. And this brings our coverage to an end. If you would like to learn more about how we got here, I suggest the Great War series on YouTube. There's a good coverage of the Ottoman front and some of the personalities here. You can also watch the Ottomans in World War I series also on YouTube. There's also the Between Two Wars series, which covers the period between. If you would like to learn what happened in October 1918, please go to the playlist and look at the previous episode. There was also a special episode about the condition of Ottoman Greeks in the empire. If you like my stuff, please like and subscribe. See you next month.